Good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Quit your dancing, because it is time to join us once again for your fortnightly fast charge on electric vehicles and infrastructure, coast to coast EVs. We're on number 41 now, which is no mean feat. We've done pretty well so far. And a reminder, you can catch us next day on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, AL for your audio-only replays. Always good for the commute to or from work. I'm joined above me today by Mr. Walter Schulte of the Network Architect channel and Mr. Eric Way from News Coolum. We have several special guests today, so we'll be bringing them up very shortly here. But how's everybody doing? Good week? Lots of good videos coming out of your respective channels? Battery deep dives, visits to Circle K.
All that.
Good stuff. Plenty to check out. And also I should give an honorable mention to Tyler at The Average EV, who has been covering various pieces, but also covered the Apple Green Electric and Tesla Supercharger kerfuffle, we'll call it, on the New Jersey Turnpike. So admirable work from him trucking up there just to be criticized by Tesla people once he posted the video. So let's all jump to his support in the comments if you can do that. Proud to be, or happy to be joined on this one, and it will get a bit crowded here, so I may dive off by first welcome to Diane and Steve Wallace down in Walter's neck of the woods, North Carolina, and it's Winston-Salem. Is that correct, Diane and Steve?
Yeah, I actually work for the city of Winston-Salem, but we live in Kernersville. But yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Is it one city or two cities?
It's called the Twin City. They combined. Like in what 19? They were two separate cities.
I always thought it was. I didn't know that they combined.
Yeah.
Conjoined city.
Yep, the Twin City.
There you go. And we also are welcoming the inspiration for tonight's topic, Joann Orange.
Hello.
Spouse of returning guest, usual guest you've probably seen several times, Darren, up in Chicago, Illinois. Thank you for joining us, Joann, and appreciate your kind of take on the, something we've touched on in various episodes here, I think, but good to divert a whole episode to kind of the different types of EV travel and what makes that a safe and seamless experience for everybody that's on the call tonight. So I think we'll start off with Joann, and as I say, I'll dive off, but I want to give you a little space just to kind of let us know the type of EV travel you've done. Obviously, we know Darren kind of from his Tesla stories, but let's hear your side of the story. Maybe it's not all as beautiful and rosy in the world of FSD, but you can let us know. So I'll drop off here and hand it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I am a new EV owner. I just purchased mine in March, but being married to Darren, prior to that, I had a ICE car. I had a Volkswagen station wagon that I had for 14 years. I believe to drive it till it dies. That's my motto. And then keep kicking it until it's really dead. But I have been interested in EVs. My profession, I am an environmental attorney. So back when I was in graduate school and law school, I always wanted to get an EV, and I was on the original Volt list when it was a sports car. And then when it came out and it looked like it did, I stuck with my Dodge Neon. So, it's a little bit different, but I've only owned one personally, but I was on the adventures that Darren had purchased the Bolt right before we got married. So all of his chaos and driving that in the worst possible conditions, I got to experience all the joy. And now it's a little nicer, much more convenient to have a better charging network and just more availability of any charging station for any type of EV now. So much better than finding random Walgreens throughout the country.
Right, and that's kind of what brought us on, I think, to, you've lived through those early Bolt EV days that Eric and I have. Eric still lives, and I still wish I lived, because I kind of like to have a Bolt in the driveway, to be honest. But you've certainly seen the same kind of evolution from those early days of one single stall that may or may not have been working, through to the massive repository of options that we'll get onto tonight. So yeah, thanks again for that. Diane and Steve, can you let us know? We've obviously touched on where you are. Maybe you're kind of, we can see from the details there, R1T and Ioniq 6, and I'll pop some of the pictures that you sent, Diane, as we talk here. But I'll drop off and let you kind of give the same, context to your EV journey into where we are today.
Yeah, well, I wanted an EV all my life. When I was 9 years old, I read about, we called them greenhouse gases back in 1974, right after the oil crisis. And I read an article in school, I guess I was in 4th grade, and it said that it talked about greenhouse gases, but EVs were right around the corner, don't worry, and solar panels right around the corner. So, and then, and actually a classmate of mine, her father installed solar panels. This was in 1978. So then 49 years later, we got the R1T. So, and then let's see, 6 months later, I got the Ioniq 6. So yeah, that's our EV journey so far. And then, so it's been almost 2 years with the R1T and a year and a half with the Ioniq 6. And we just got a camper, so that's like our new project. So traveling with the camper is a lot different than traveling in the Ioniq 6. And typically I drive, 36 miles a day to work. And then other than that, we've been camping a lot. So that's sort of our EV travels.
So I super appreciate that. I don't know if I actually realized when we spoke that that was a part of your travel experience. That will definitely bring us on to a different kind of safety, trying to figure out how to park those things in any given charging station. But certainly there's a few more like Walter's background there that are starting to pop up to help you out. That's awesome. Thank you both, for all of you, for kind of giving that context. That kind of lays the groundwork for what we want to talk about tonight, which is different types of EV travel as a piece of EV charging safety. So that kind of means a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, I think. Joann, I think, because you kind of gave us the inspiration for this, and certainly Darren said that this was something that was on your mind. As you travel, I know it's a family kind of thing now, as well as pets and people. So maybe you can kind of lead us up to what kind of considerations you have as you think about traveling, going the long distances that you do, maybe where you've been, first of all, the kind of trips you make, and what kind of prompted you to think about safety as you travel there.
Yeah, routinely we go back and forth to Florida with the family, with the puppy and a baby. So making sure that we have well-lit, safe charging stations available along the route is important. But with the Bolt, had some calamities of trips to go visit my friend for their 40th birthday with a headwind, ended up trickling into a Chevy dealer in random place in Columbus area, just almost pushing it in, no power, anything, like no heat. It was lovely. And just the situation also that I had once driven his car back from Louisville and was going downtown Chicago and would not have been able to make it home. So I had to find a place to charge in the city with a Bolt in 2019, and found a Walgreens that wasn't quite great. Then a dark, scary parking garage that was, going into parking garages in downtown Chicago late at night, there is not the best situations often. And now with a little one, it is to be able to have the accessibility to clean, safe restrooms that, to change a baby. On our trip back from Florida this year, we were in the little part of Kentucky right at the top of the mountains, or Tennessee at the top of the mountains, right before Nashville, and got pulled into the charging station. Nice, been there before, but the gas stations were all closed. So 11 o'clock at night, nothing open, and have a baby. So I changed the baby in the frunk and went with that. But being able to have a place to use the restroom that is open and available, even with Tesla or any public charging situation, hours, like gas stations in rural America are not open 24/7 like they are in Chicago. And ditches are an option, but not with a baby.
It seems like a good opportunity to bring in Walter, not so much for the baby angle, because I know his are all off in college now, but certainly his travels have taken him across the country with the kind of 24/7 facility that you see behind there with Pilot Flying J. Walter, I'd love to hear your kind of reaction to that, and also, Joanne, if you've come across any of those type of 24/7 facilities and how they play into your, possibly your decision making as more of them come onto the charging map.
Yeah, so my youngest right now is with his girlfriend. He might be off making new ones as we speak. Hopefully not, because my wife will kill me if she comes back and that's the case. Yeah, so Joanne, a couple of things I was thinking of. The safety that you're referring to, in my opinion, there's basically two kinds of concerns. The ones, as you say, in the inner city, and I'm a Chicago native, I'm familiar that there's definitely areas of Chicago you don't want to find yourself late at night or during the day even. And having to be cordoned off as a result of needing a charge in an uncomfortable area is definitely a concern of the inner city type of fields. One thing I found about inner city chargers, I don't know if it's similar in Chicago, is that although they might be in unscrupulous neighborhoods, generally I found that the charging stations themselves become a community asset of sorts, and the locals kind of rally around the protection of those chargers. So at least the charging stations themselves can be safe. Once you venture out and have to get back onto the interstate, you have to venture into no man's land. And I know there's areas of Chicago, regardless, where you don't want to find yourself late at night. So I could definitely appreciate that. But then there's also the rural America, which can be frightening to a similar degree, but for different reasons. And there's no police anywhere. There's no one you can call, and as you can say, everything could be closed, and no amenities or anything like that. So I think there's two different approaches to safety: the kind of like unscrupulous neighborhoods in an inner city, and then also the very remote, no help coming type of rural remote areas that don't have any amenities either. And before turning you loose on that one, the stations that Steve was referring to, my wife and I went to the Grand Canyon and basically stopped at these exclusively. And the nice thing about them, they're open 24/7, 365, always staffed, always open with clean restrooms. And so those have been kind of like a bit of a godsend, because it was not too long ago where stations like this just didn't exist.
Yeah, especially when we went to Denver, coming back from Denver, we needed to charge and reached a rural charger that there was no cell service. I had Verizon, he had T-Mobile, the car had AT&T, got to the charger and it didn't work. So there was nothing around but crawling back on the highway, going 40 in a 70, being passed by the semis. It's very terrifying,
Yeah.
especially with the wind that a semi pushes against a bolt.
Was that in Kansas?
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty rural. It's starting to get a little bit better through there, but not too much, but it's a little bit better now.
Yeah, it was just not great, but to have, if more pilots open up stations, that'll be great, because going to and from my law school in Michigan, every time I stopped at a pilot going to and from in Indiana, because it was the cheapest gas for my little Dodge Neon, and got to save a penny where you can. But they were always great facilities with clean restrooms, and all the truckers were always just super nice. You pull in there at 3 a.m. and they're all just very cordial. Not a
criminal among them.
No, just sweet, nice, salt of the earth people. And, just the Chicago situation, that the certain areas, there's a homeless situation in downtown Chicago too, where I went to the charging handle and there was someone's life next to the charger because it was wedged between a tree and protected from the wind. So I was like, oh, sorry, I don't want to disturb you. But, that's uncomfortable situation that is, I wish more people could have access to homes, but I need to charge. Otherwise I'm stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point to kind of delineate the two, right? Because there's obviously travel requirements and safety that happen when you're away from home and on the road, but also inner city and kind of suburban areas that you're, maybe more familiar with can still be a concern, and that's not necessarily where you're going to get these kind of the pilots, the loves, those kind of things. So there's a separate potential wave of openings there with the likes of Iona Rechargeries, the kind of flagship sites maybe you've seen in San Francisco with Electrify America's Harrison Street station, and being inside and indoors, having some level of security to kind of ameliorate that problem as well. Just moving over to Diane and Steve, obviously you have a slightly different scenario down there. I guess you're obviously near cities, but it's a bit less kind of big, bulky New York, Chicago, Boston kind of scenarios, right? I think, Diane, you had mentioned to me that you are less concerned about safety than some people may think. But maybe you can give us a little kind of background on your considerations as you travel and the types of scenarios that you've come across as you've driven to different charging stations.
Yeah, and I actually have not taken a solo EV trips. Steve has, and I'll let him talk in a minute. Yeah, so I've had pretty good experiences. I travel during the day. I don't travel for business. And like I said, I travel during the day, and I've taken ICE. Yeah, we still have a Chevy Impala. So like when I went to the eclipse in, it was April 8th, 2024, and I drove the Chevy Impala. I planned it out, and I did that on purpose just to reduce the number of going to see the eclipse, there's a lot of variables anyway. And so to reduce the EV charging variable, I had the Ioniq 6, but I took the Chevy Impala. So I drove from Winston-Salem to Pittsburgh to see my mother, and then from Pittsburgh to Streetsboro, Ohio, to see the Singularity, which was great, by the way. So, yeah, and when we plan trips, I use the ChargeWay app, and I use PlugShare to read the reviews, and I just plan it out. We just plan it out ourselves, and I'll let Steve talk because he, yeah, I'll let you take it.
Like when we went to Avalon, New Jersey, we again with the R1T, the Rivian, we had got access to the Tesla chargers, which is a real game changer, because that meant automatically gave us all those extra charging stations. And we knew that we wouldn't have any trouble because we could plot our trip and planned to charge early enough that if those chargers were a problem or covered up with a lot of people trying to charge, we could go to the next charger. So we actually stopped early. We had an extra stop or two planned. It took a little longer, but we felt real confident, and it was because we had that ability to stop at Tesla's. Now, again, because I had to wait for my R1T and I knew it was coming, I took and started to plan trips ahead of time. Like, I go to the beach to fish. So on the way down to the beach, I would seek out charging stations before I got my R1T. And I would look at them and see if they were up and running and kind of get acquainted. Just recently, we went up to the mountains beyond around Cherokee. North Carolina, and they had Helene up there, so there's a lot of devastation.
It was still beat up pretty bad.
Oh, I'm
Cherokee?
sorry.
Do you think it was beat up?
Cherokee was okay. They had some flooding, but it wasn't like Asheville.
Yeah, I haven't been back there since, and I don't know. I know there's certain pockets that got really hardly hit, and I don't know if Cherokee was one of them.
Cherokee had some flooding, but it was not the devastation that you saw on the news. It was more, even on this trip up there, we had part of a hillside come down, and I was at a dead stop for like an hour and 15 minutes while they had to clear the debris, because the hills were still moving up there. But before we took the camper up, I took a trip up to Cherokee solo to check out the chargers ahead of time, because pulling the camper, you have to stop a lot more frequently because of the air drag, because of the camper. So basically, I took a solo trip, went up and saw a high school classmate of mine I hadn't seen in 45 years, and we had a good time, and I got to check out the chargers along the way. So did a lot of homework before I got the R1T. Like I said, we've taken a trip up to New Jersey as far as we've gone. We always traveled in the daylight. We didn't travel after dark. We've had good experiences all the way around, and I only found one charger a charging station that was in a place that I wouldn't necessarily want Diane to go solo.
That's that's the point, right? We have all of us have traveling companions at some point or another, whether it's pets, people, kids, family members. The trailer certainly introduces another aspect of it that would make you want to do that homework, and I could certainly see why you would go to the lengths of kind of making the trip before you made the trip to that extent. Eric, it sounds that that kind of more rural environment is your bread and butter, the places that you visit, at least North Carolina, until you get to North California. Keep making that mistake. Until you hit the kind of cities, you're in that environment. What are you thinking as you hit charger safety topics? And you're obviously rating these. You're the kind of OG of what do I need to consider from other people's perspectives. What do you see on that score?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I've never been all that concerned about my own personal safety, right? Like I can have a long, detailed discussion about that doesn't really pertain to electric vehicles. But on that note, I will say too that people overlook how dangerous gas stations can be. Because a lot of people get assaulted in gas stations, a lot of muggings, a lot of things like that happen in gas stations too, and I think people overlook that when they criticize like electric vehicle charging that's in the middle of nowhere without lighting, because they're both dangerous, right? They're both dangerous situations, but I personally, my concern is almost always more with my own car than anything else. And like when I first started traveling early on, I would pull into it. Like the very first DC charger that I used on a trip is literally behind the mall, the strip mall, in the back alley without any lighting. And I'm thinking to myself, well, like I'm personally not concerned about it. And it's San Luis Obispo, right? It's not exactly a bed of like, crime. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm not personally scared, but I could see how people I know would be. I wouldn't want my mother to be using a charger at nighttime in a back alley of a strip mall where there's no lighting, right? And it's funny because EVgo actually added lights to that location, like I think within 6 months of I think me posting that video. So hopefully it had an impact. But my concern is actually always more with the safety of the vehicle, because I'm not one of those EV drivers who sits in my car while I'm charging. I stop, I plug in, and then I go use whatever amenities there are nearby. I go and use whatever services are nearby. I'm stuck in my car for 2-3 hours before I stop to charge. So why am I going to sit in my car while it's charging, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'll leave my vehicle. But then what you have is a situation is where if there are people who are interested in stealing or vandalizing or whatever, they know that there's going to be a car parked in a particular location for an extended period of time. And without security on site, without lighting on site, without people on site, it makes it a much easier target in terms of theft and whatnot. And we even had a supercharger in Northern California that was actually really known for that for a long time. It was the one in Ukiah, where people would park, and it's in a dark alley off the side. And, criminals knew that people would park their car there, plug in and leave. And then they would wait for them to leave, go break their window and steal something out of the car. So, that was always my primary concern with it, which is why I think this new movement toward having these chargers in locations like a Pilot, during travel centers, during gas stations, and to Joanne's point too, I think you were the one that mentioned this. Not gas stations in rural areas aren't open 24 hours a day, and we've seen that a lot too, where I'll pull into a gas station where the pumps are turned off. You can't even buy gas, right? So yeah, like that is actually a concern with these chargers as well, is that, there's a possibility that you're just in the middle of nowhere and there's no one there to watch the car. There's no one there to protect the car. There's no security or any other people on site to say anything. So
are you not worried about your safety because you look so much like Bruce Willis and no one's going to mess with you?
Well, that is part of it, sure.
Just give off that badass vibe. Yeah, I think that's a good suite of kind of considerations, and it sets us up nicely for kind of the best and worst case scenarios that I think we'll hit in a minute here. Right after I run through the folks in the chat here, so that we can find out where everybody is and what they consider safe and unsafe. So we have Andy Getch in Fort Myers, Florida, hot off a 4,000-mile road trip from Florida, Wisconsin, Iowa, and back to Florida. I think it was in the middle of that last time we streamed. That's in a 2021 Marquis Standard range, planning another trip, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and hey, Massachusetts. Stop in, say hi, assuming I'm not on holiday myself. Thank you for the road trips. Those sound like fun. Mark Berger up in Newcastle, Ontario, 2023 Kia EV6. Good evening. Thank you for joining us north of the border. Also hope to get up there. And Mark is in a similar situation to me with semi-new old replacement ICCUs in our Hyundai and Kia models. So hopefully those hold up, and there's a whole load of content coming up on that, I promise. Paul in Bakersfield, California, 2020 Bolt with 48,000 miles, total of 100,000 miles driving electric. Congratulations on cracking the six figures. Leonard over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 2021 Tesla Model 3 at 81,000 miles, hot on Paul's heels. Better get a couple of road trips in to crank up to that 100K as well. Thanks for joining us. Mike Mahan, SoCal Tesla Model 3 Highland and Lexus RZ 450E. Getting my acronym work in here, so thanks, Mike, for dropping those in. Trying to wrap his glass roof for that SoCal sunshine. Karen Sandberg in Hedgesville, West Virginia, 2024 Blazer EV, rear-wheel drive, just over 4,000 miles. Congrats, nice new Chevy. That's a story Walter has popped into the news hopper for tonight, if we get to it, as Chevy and GM kind of take second place again on EV sales. So congrats on that. And West Virginia, definitely an area we should hit on charging and infrastructure very soon here. So Scott Owens joining us from a road trip in Atlanta to Greenville, I-85 North. He had some more commentary later on, so we'll get to that. Thanks for joining us. Another North Carolina crew, 2024 Model Y, long range. Welcome, Cecil Martin. Wills Leandrew, Pottsville, Pennsylvania. I messed that up last time. We'll probably mess it up again, so let's just say that's a nice county to live in. Congratulations and welcome. Landon over at the Arkansas E-Traveler. Good evening from Bentonville, Arkansas. He's been into more sunny climes in recent weeks, so welcome back, and thank you for giving me some lowdown on the Walmart Energy continued expansion. Lots of stuff coming up on that, so watch the Arkansas E-Traveler this weekend for the latest and greatest. And let's see if I've got anybody else to introduce. I will get to the trips very soon here, but want to make sure I hit everybody who we haven't spoken to. Flurry Guy, bonjour. Quebec City, driving a Chevy Equinox 2RS 2024. These Chevys are out there and definitely making some headway in the market. It's good to see. Jeff Keenan, hello. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Anybody else I missed? I think, yes. Better late than never. Always welcome at any party. Crazy Postman from the Oklahoma kind of area and Francis Energy's home.
Yeah, he checked with Francis Energy, and it turns out there's no change. At least in Oklahoma.
No change as in no money?
No change is still busted.
Yeah. Well, it's an ongoing saga. Maybe it's
I know, he had some false hope pumped into him from somewhere. I'm not sure where he got that.
We have tried. Yoldi Traveler in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Marquee Rally driver. Love that. Love the wheels and love most of the colors. So any photos you want to post, happy to see those. Bill B rented a Marquee from Avis, borrowed an adapter so I could charge at Tesla Supercharger. No Walmart restrooms. I definitely want to get onto that because Walmart is the best and worst case, it seems, for some people. So I want to hit that. And I think that does it for the intros. If I've missed you and you commented further down, I will try and get to you later. But thank you all for joining us, and thank you for letting us know where you are and what you drive. So the next part of the kind of conversation that I wanted to get onto was the kind of best and worst case scenarios of these charging experiences, maybe from the current day, because I know, like, in the past, obviously we've all got kind of some story of a place that wasn't great for charging, didn't work for us, made us think twice about this whole EV adventure. But in the kind of last year, maybe 18 months, the kind of worst case charging scenario that you've come across, and then the best, just where it all came together and everything kind of hit those safety markers that you kind of laid out in the first little bit there. And Joanne, definitely back to you on that one, because I know you have various different kind of perspectives.
Yeah, I would say start off with the positive note. The best supercharger experience that I like is the Space Coast Supercharger in Cape Canaveral. Right if you go to see a launch of any SpaceX, there is a supercharger location. It's right across the street from a Raceway 24/7 gas station, and there's a nice little Thai restaurant in the strip mall there. It's well lit, and A1A to cross there is very easy. There is no facility on that side of the street. You just have to cross the street. But it is a nice location that has a good amount of chargers, no problems. The worst situation recently would be that in the Atlanta suburbs, there are some superchargers that are pretty close to the highway, but you get off the highway and you are in a traffic jam. And to even walk through a parking lot to reach facilities is a nightmare of trying. It's like crossing a freeway in a parking lot because everyone's cutting through the parking lot. Safety wise, it's not unsafe unless you're like trying to play Frogger going across, but it's well lit. There is facilities, but just to get back to the highway, you went a quarter mile off, but it still takes 25 minutes because all 30,000 people in the town are on that road at the same time. So not the congestion of the charger itself. There are still stalls available, but there is just the congestion in the area. Like getting off the highway there is just a nightmare. So that's my best and worst of current.
Thank you. I started to write these down so that I can kind of compile them into the, here's where not to go and here's where you should absolutely put on your travel list. Diane, over to you. Places you kind of hit that in probably the time of your ownership because you have relatively new EVs there, but any that jump out and those that were not so favorable, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say sometimes crowded chargers can be not great or unsafe because there can be altercations. We've never really had to wait. We saw an altercation during a wait.
Yes.
So the fellow that was waiting.
Yes.
And I remember when we charged outside of DC, the chargers, it was a supercharger was just packed, and we're not used to that in North Carolina. We're used to like nobody being there.
Yeah.
Or, two people. And, but this was in Maryland, and it was very orderly, and the Tesla folks, they knew what they were doing, and were we taking up 2 spots?
I was able to get an in spot, and the Tesla charger was out away from the curb, and I was able to get in without taking up 2 spots. But I had to be a little bit lucky just to kind of get that particular spot. If not, I would have taken up 2, and it might have been a different situation.
And last summer, folks weren't used to seeing R1Ts at the Tesla supercharger. Sometimes, I think maybe twice, someone thought we were icing the Tesla supercharger. One fella said, he kind of looked at us funny, and then he said, "Oh, it's all in the family." And I said, "Yeah, it's all in the family." So like too crowded can be a problem. And then really isolated, that was what Steve in Sanford.
Yeah.
At City Hall in Sanford.
Well, it was a vacant. Duke Energy put in a couple of chargers, and Shell Recharge the app is what we use to charge there. And I went there kind of a solo trip coming back from a family reunion that I went to, and I stopped there, and it was kind of behind some buildings, and I wasn't sure what it was that was kind of behind at first. And then I heard the motorcycles, and it was a set of bars, and they were having a motorcycle event. And then they cranked them up to show off for each other. And another fella come up to charge. There was only 2 chargers there. So another fella come up to charge, and he and I started a conversation. He said he was there earlier and couldn't charge because that parking area was full of motorcycles and couldn't get to the charger. So there was no amenities, no trash can. There was a light. It was late in the evening, but not dark. and the party was winding down. So I would have not been happy if Diane had been on a solo trip and had to stop and charge there. I would have been upset. But after that, Tesla came in and opened their chargers, and then about 30 miles away, Tesla came in and opened another set of chargers. So that whole trip has changed in the last 11 months.
Yeah, it's a solid point. The options that are starting to open up, we'll get onto it in a little bit here, the different places you might consider, but that starts to be, you can do that research, the kind of planning that we've talked about, and if one comes up on your list, whereas in 3 or 4 years ago that was where you had to stop because that was the only place you could stop. Now there are starting to be these places where you say, all right, well, that looks like it might be sketchy, I'm going to immediately take it off the list, try this other one that maybe more aligned with the solo travel, the whatever travel case you have there. So we should go to our co-hosts as well. Walter, best and worst case scenarios on your various journeys?
Yeah, so I'm having a hard time choosing a best, and I think my best and worst is going to be with the same CPO. So boiling it down, point a gun to my head and choose one, I'm going to say the Halifax, North Carolina Tesla Supercharger at the Oasis. Is open 24/7. The facility is great. I don't know if anyone has seen that one before. It's got an enormous amount of stalls. It even has a pull-through stall immediately off the interstate. Canopies, windshield squeegees, garbage cans, a quick grab-and-go convenience store, plus a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant inside. There's always police around there, so it's very safe. And cool technology with the V4 dispensers and everything. So I would say of the ones that I've been to recently, and it's a hard call because I've been to some really nice stations recently. Definitely the IANA is contending there for my number one pick. But right now I'm going to say the Halifax Supercharger in North Carolina off Interstate 95. Now the worst one, and in between Raleigh and Charlotte, there's basically two ways of getting between those 2 points. You could either stick to the interstates and take 85 to 40, but if you stick to the nav, normally it's going to cut you through a rural area of North Carolina coming on back. Yeah, so in that route, there was a Tesla Supercharger that was said to be open to non-Teslas, and I believed him. And as a former Tesla owner, the reliability of Tesla Superchargers you just take for granted. I mean, they always work. So I pulled up to one, and I was in a charging desert. The Supercharger was basically the only thing there, and I posted up to it with about 6%. And there was 2 Teslas there charging, and I couldn't get my car to start charging. And I had charged on Superchargers before, but for some reason, this station would not charge my car. And I was thinking for a long time, what the heck am I going to do now? I mean, it was like an existential meltdown moment for me. I'm like, Teslas always work. I don't know what's going on here. And the big problem is there's no phone number to call. You can't like pick up the phone and call the Tesla Supercharger and say, reboot your station or something. It's just, you're on your own. And so I didn't know what to do. I crawled out to a charge point station in close enough where I was able to make it and charge at about 40 kilowatts, enough in order to get out of Dodge and get to the next station. But that was definitely a situation that shook me. And I have a great respect for the reliability of the Tesla Supercharger network. Like, my son has taken ownership of my Equinox with my wife out of country, and I'm in her Lyric. And he's been driving all over the state of North Carolina. He's been to Wilmington last weekend. He's going back to Wilmington again this weekend. And I was talking to him, and like, just go to the Superchargers. You have an adapter and you never have to think about it. And just go to the Superchargers. It's fine. And I gave him access to my app, and he knows how to use the adapter and everything. So I don't have a problem with the reliability of the Superchargers or recommending it. But that one station was really it was a bummer. It was a real situation. Being stuck there with low state of charge and no one to call was definitely an issue.
Okay, highs and lows of the supercharger network for you. Thanks for kind of putting the same CPO under the spotlight. At least no one can accuse you of being anti-Tesla when you've voted them for your
Very
favorite
balanced,
store.
right?
Yeah, uber balanced, fair and balanced. Eric, extensive travels. I'm sure you can pick a favorite and a least favorite out of your almost 200,000 miles now.
Oh, I mean, are you looking at like recent history or just the
Yeah,
whole?
well, no, I mean, like, you can go back. I know you've been a little more kind of regional, North
Yeah.
California based. If you have examples from your more recent past, fantastic. But if you want to delve back into the archives, that's no problem as well.
Yeah, because I mean, anybody who's been watching my recent videos, it's been kind of a who's who of cataclysmic failures. And, I even got called out by someone in my chat about basically, man, this all looks terrible, or why are you even showing this, right? And it's like, I'm going on a 200-mile round trip, and I'm just happen to be showing the status of certain chargers along the way. And there are, sadly, I will say, with the public charging, at least in Northern California right now, there are more failures than there are successes. And that's going by a site by site, charger by charger experience. But in terms of the best and worst, um, I'll start off with the worst because, but unlike Walter, I'm going to probably be accused of being a hater. But yeah, it's actually a tie, and I realize it's a tie for slightly different reasons, but there's some overlap, and that's actually the superchargers and Electrify America are, to me, tied for the worst experiences right now. And that's from a non-Tesla EV driver, though, so that has to be clear as well. And part of the reason is there's an expectation when you go to a station that's high power with a lot of stalls. The big problem is, and especially in California, both of those providers have audience capture. So there's a massive amount of people who are only going to or exclusively going to use those chargers. So you have a high demand. And in Electrify America's case, you still have low reliability, and that's a recipe for disaster. And then in the Tesla supercharger case, it requires an adapter, which really puts a damper on any experience. Having to carry an adapter with you and then use it, as opposed to having a built-in or integrated adapter that you can use, makes a world of difference in that charging experience. And then in both cases, being gatekept by an app makes that experience absolutely horrible. So, like, for me personally, I see almost no benefit from the higher power of those chargers because I'm driving a Chevy Bolt EV. So it's not worth the inconvenience of the crowds. And in Electrify America's case, it's not worth the inconvenience of the poor reliability. And in the supercharger case, it's not worth the experience of having to use an adapter and take up 2 stalls in what's likely to be a fairly busy charger. So those two are kind of tied for that worst experience for me right now. And then the best experience, it's not even close. Like, night and day has been electric era. And I think people have watched me kind of showcase their build out along the I-5 corridor through Northern California. And they don't have an app yet. Technically, you can call in to have them activate. But you just put your credit card in and you pay the same price. There's no promotional price. There's no membership price. They're split power chargers, so you're literally doubling the number of stalls available per dispenser. So along the I-5 corridor, most of them are minimum 6 to 8 to, I believe they have one that's maybe 12 stalls that I haven't gotten to up in Southern Oregon yet. And they have like a 98% uptime. And so it's literally you just pull in, pay with your card, and you're charging. And it's seamless and easy. And they're all located just off the freeway at gas stations. So your baseline experience is a convenience store that you have a gas station. So it's kind of like, if that's the lowest bar, right? Like it's exactly what we need to actually have just a universal adoption of EV for just the average traveler. My only knock on them is the lack of pull-through charging ability. But for the niche that they're filling it better than anyone else.
You're going to get more posts on LinkedIn from their CEO if you keep up this way. Well done. You're a favorite of the month for covering the Williams site, for sure.
Yeah, you've been called out all over LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll have to send you the screenshots. So from my part, I'll keep it fairly short, and recent history is full of good charging experiences, actually. But I think just for the topic we're talking about tonight, the situation at Rove in Santa Ana in California is just, it's a next level kind of experience. They have a ground up EV charging site with, you know, battery storage on site, solar canopies, Tesla and ABB chargers co-located. ABB is monitored by Rove, or managed and monitored by Rove, and assistance on site to help you, people walking around. The lighting is great. I mean, all of the things that we've covered here tonight, other than the rural location and limited access in remote areas, I think is covered. Possibly not pull through, although there are so many stalls there that you could finagle one as a pull through. But I think that kind of, for me, was an eye opener. Visiting with Mike in Southern California last month, or 2 months ago now, that just stood out as a real kind of future of charging moment. Worst is tougher, I think. I mean, I've had some showstoppers, certainly with superchargers, because of Hyundai's issues with the 800 volt architecture and access. I've certainly had my fair share of Electrify America moments, which is this one behind me, which is in Albany, New York, and has certainly seen better days than that photo. But again, that takes it back a long way, so I don't really want to slam networks for past indiscretions. I think the worst has probably been dealerships. When I did my trip last year across country, I want to call out Ford Charge for excellent dealership experiences and adequate power, but the dealership charging experience is still very difficult because some of them are in really good locations, places you do need to charge, especially in the middle of the country where charging options are fewer and far between. When those go wrong with a low power or blocked because of inventory vehicles, there's definitely one that was in, I want to say, Missouri, that was just really hard. It was annoying because this was going to be my, quick charge stop and get back on the road, and then I had to refactor the whole kind of trip around that. But dealerships still have this kind of role to play in my eyes. It's maybe a plan B, but they really need to, if they're going to offer any kind of fast charging that is meant for more than charging their own vehicles, make sure it's at that Ford Charge level, I think, because that is really, souring customers on the brand if you give that a bad experience. So those would be mine. I also want to give Joann another section just to kind of weigh in a little bit on that supercharger thing, because there's a lot of us non-Tesla drivers here, and we don't want to bash Tesla because we're all kind of glad that that's open as an option now, as Diane and Steve both pointed out. But Joann, it's from Darren's kind of reports and knowing that you're traveling with a young child, obviously reliability is key and coverage as well. That's presumably been a game changer and massive peace of mind for you as you take those trips from, Chicago down to Florida and back, and knowing that's kind of a reliable resource all the way there.
Yeah, having the availability, and even for Midwest trips, in the summer we like to stay around the Midwest, and going to Michigan or Wisconsin, having the availability. We used to stop at an Ozinga cement place for a charge, but now there's the Tesla network, so it's great with the baby, with the dog and a baby at the same time. It's good to have more availability, and not, the Ozinga site is great. It's right in South Holland, or South Haven. It's nice to get to, and you can walk to the beach, but it is also a cement factory, so having more availability with the supercharger network and the number of stalls because some of the places, even in the Midwest, where you get off the highway and there's some in Indiana, some of the power companies have availability of. There's one in Bloomington, Indiana, where they have a chargers available from the power company, and it's great. But there's two. You go to a supercharger, and the smallest site that I've experienced is like 8. So you're not in that same situation.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of a game changer, isn't it? Even if some of us have individual models that don't necessarily make the most of it. It's certainly, I think, the people I know who have taken trips have started to default to superchargers, and the locations work for them. Dan, you obviously, as you started to travel with needing to think about pull through. You said you plan with Chargeway.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, just to quickly, for anyone else who's watching who is planning summer trips with kind of things that they need to tow, or maybe they just have a big truck and don't want to deal with, pokey little parking spaces. What kind of tips do you have for getting the big vehicles or pulling vehicles well catered to at a charging stop?
Yeah. Well, one reason I like Chargeway is because of the Tesla chargers are in red and the CCS are in green, and they're numbered, and it's just really easy for me. And then we actually like Electrify America because it's free for us. It's free. It's for me. That's until January. So our go-tos are Electrify America, Tesla, RAN when there's basically they're in places where there's not a lot of charging. And then we go to Circle K a lot and EV Connect. And Steve does all that. He has the apps on his phone. And then as far as I'll let you talk about it, but you're like pulling in straight and able to charge. I guess that's our technique. So,
well, again, we just got the travel trailer. So I was going to the coast and doing some tent camping in my R1T. So I would stop and actually look at the chargers on the way down and on the way back to see which chargers I could get into without blocking the traffic up. And I was making notes on all the chargers on what I could do, whether I could get in sideways or if I could pull straight in and try to make a plan. Again, my camper is small, but it still can be, it can still cause congestion. So that I just did my homework. That's all I could tell you.
Yeah.
We're not going to take the camper off so far without really doing a lot of careful planning, looking at, if I can't go and look at it, we'll be looking at photographs of the chargers and the layout of the charging location. So we'll continue doing homework.
That's where your kind of plug share, Chargeway, all of those things start to come into even Google Maps now, getting the wide picture and being able to see if it's not a pull through, maybe it could be jimmied into being a pull through.
And looking at photos, and Steve, we almost had an altercation. One thing is, don't use a pull through if you are a car. So he pulled up to a brand new EA with 2 pull-throughs, and both of them were being used by cars without trailers. So we just parked and waited, and they looked up, and they're like, oh, and they said, oh, we've never seen a camper here. So
was that the one on 40 at the Stuckies?
It was.
Yeah.
Which one was the?
It was
going to the mountains.
Yeah, at the Stuckies.
Stuckies.
Yeah, I was at the Stuckies with
yeah. They just put that in. They got 2 pull through. It's really nice.
Really nice. And there were 2 cars.
And then you got the Tesla is the first station that we've been at where they had Tesla and the other chargers as well. So
Yeah, that's the only thing sustaining that Stuckey's. I don't know why that Stuckey's is still alive.
Yeah, I think that Smithfield Barbecue, Stuckey's, and Waffle House are gonna have new life with the Alpatronics and the different chargers. So.
Yeah.
So Alpatronics helps me onto Walmart, which I kind of want to raise as a contrarian piece here, because it's often, as we talk about charger safety or just generally bad charging experiences, is used as a byword for that. So they say, the back of a dark back of a Walmart parking lot, or the back of a dark Walmart parking lot with one charger working. So reliability piece I understand, but we're also looking to, and you have the kind of go-to resource, the Arkansas e-Traveler, in the comments here, bringing us what is essentially, other than Iona, the next wave of charging in the USA, right? Potentially within reach of 90% of Americans using Alpatronic hardware. But essentially, it's just chargers in a Walmart parking lot. They may get to a slightly higher level of installation, and we know the reliability will be good, but it's still, these polar opposites, right? The best case and worst case, which is why I wanted to hit this. Is that going to become a changing scenario where suddenly Walmart is held up as this beacon of wonderful charging safety and options? And I kind of want to go to Joann, because I don't think this is going to hit Tesla quite so much, but they will have NACS chargers. This will start to become one of the more likely options on any road trip you take because of Walmart's coverage. How do you see that potentially playing out as an option in these more safe road trips that we're kind of starting to talk about?
If it's available and closer to the highway, we've used Walmart charging at the Electrify America. In a snowstorm, we stopped in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and it was snow in southern Indiana, and there's nowhere else to go. But we were, it's available, and Walmarts have a lot that you might need to pick up if you're on a trip with family. Kids need diapers, they burp up, dogs, they chew through something, you got to pick up something. But then you also end up in that scenario where you see the Walmarts of the United States, from here to Ogallala, sitting in all these Walmart parking lots. Walmart repetitive gets a little old. So to add it into the spice is good because it's usually well lit, accessible, very, the restrooms are usually well kept. And it's just, to add it into the equation, to have another option is great.
So as a place to consider when you maybe want to do those runs, because I've done exactly the same. We have kids going to camp. You've got to buy them all the last minute, accoutrements, and Walmart as a shop is the place to go for that. But not the fifth Walmart on your road trip, as you're trying to get to your holiday destination. Walter, how you covered this before kind of passing it on to Landon. How do you see that kind of potential contrast between Walmart being held up as the worst case scenario and suddenly switching to maybe what is one of the best?
Yeah, so I think they're going to have the two-prong, both the travel corridor stations and the neighborhood stations, both on their properties once their build-out completes. And I actually think, and Landon is doing a good job of tracking what we can, I actually think they're making much more progress than we're aware of, because since they already own the property, there's really not much way of spotting, like net new constructions going in. So I think their activity is pedal to the floor, and they're likely, like I pass by my local Walmart on occasion just to see if there's any construction going, because I think it's inevitable that pretty soon every town is going to be having construction for EV charging stations in the not too distant future. And once that happens, and as you say, Steve, the reliability of the Alpatronic hyperchargers, the dual handles, the J3400 and the CCS1, also the faster charging speed than the Tesla supercharger stations until they get the V4 cabinets out there. If I was driving a Cybertruck and I wanted to max out the 800 or the 1,000 volts on the charger, on the onboard charger, I would go to an Alpitronic in a Walmart or at an Iona in order to get the faster speeds, because it's just not available at Tesla superchargers. But as far as the reliability aspect, that's one of them. But the convenience of having I think there's a major difference when the person whose property you're on is the one running the chargers versus the person whose property you're on is tolerating the chargers on their property. And I don't know if that's the right way of describing it, but that's always the way I feel. If I'm going there and someone else's chargers are on someone else's property, I'm like, well, is it okay if I go into their, I guess it's okay, sort of thing. I guess I should be polite. But if I'm a customer at a branded charger in a Walmart, I could walk into the Walmart and I could just, sit in the seating and be like, I'm a customer, what are you going to do? So anyway, maybe that's just me being overly sensitive, but that is something that I am cognizant of.
I think it's a good point in the sense of when they own the experience, they have a much bigger interest in making that something that you want to frequent, right? So especially going into Walmart, if it's linked to the app, they're starting to get deals maybe, or pull you into the store because they know that you're charging, or they know your charging habits. I can see that for sure. Just think it's an interesting contrast that the example that most people reach for when we talk about this charger safety is some dead end Walmart parking lot. Maybe they're just going to be a lot closer to the entrance. That could be as simple as it needs to be. Eric, anything you want on that, or will we move on to compelling providers?
Well, I mean, I've always been a fan of the Walmart location, just because I think that it's also a community support, right? So we can say, like, there's a lot of criticism that can be levied against Walmart as a corporation, but once they're in, they are employing locals, and a lot of the Walmarts now have grocery stores, they have delis, they have food courts inside them, and so in terms of just an all-around charging stop that pretty much serves every need okay, but maybe to Joanne's point, doesn't serve all needs exceptionally. I think it's just a good general purpose, all-purpose site to have. And like I said, I've seen some of the criticisms that have come out of the Midwest, and I don't know if this is just a difference in geographic location, but where I am, all of our Walmarts are literally just off the freeway, right? You're talking about within a quarter mile of the freeway, at most maybe a half mile of the freeway. So it's a super convenient location for travelers as well. But I've seen some reports of them being 2 miles off, 3 miles off, 5 miles off the freeway. And in that case, I really don't consider it a travel charger anymore. It's more of an urban support charger, which of course we still need those as well. So either way you slice it, I think it's an effective location, typically with security, usually with all of the amenities, oftentimes 24/7 open, bathrooms that are available. So just overall, I have a hard time being too critical of them, and I think they fit a really important niche. It's just you don't want every stop that you make when traveling to be at a Walmart. So I might have some updates. I don't know. There's construction at my local Walmart, so I need to investigate and see what's going on behind some of those fences. So
get on the text chain with Landon, give him an update. Cool. Well, so we're past the hour mark. I want to make sure I'm respectful. We usually go another 10 minutes or so here. If any of you need to drop off, please feel free. You don't have to hang out and talk about parking lots and charges with us, but we will continue to benefit from your experience if you want to stay on. So, but if you disappear here, it is all good. The next phase, and other than kind of going to the comments, which I will do in a little bit here, is to kind of look forward to the summer. Everybody has plans, I know this, and I just laid a video out there of a really flying trip to Pennsylvania and back to Boston, which is actually a solid 1,000-mile round trip once you get into different routes. And they're just even for me tracking this stuff, it kind of laid out the number of options that we have now. There's so many different types, many of them we've talked about here, although we've barely even touched on Iona, and how quickly they're moving. So I kind of want to get your feel for each of you in your different regions and traveling with your different models, who you're excited to try this summer on your trips, if anyone, to kind of, let people know what they might want to look out for. Haven't touched on Mercedes-Benz high-power charging here, only briefly touched on Electric Era. Maybe there's some regional providers, or are you just sticking to your kind of tried and trusted favorites? And Joanne, unless you need to drop off, in which case you can, I'll definitely pass down to you for that one first.
I would like to try some IKEA charging. There are new chargers going in IKEAs, and they're right off the highway, and you can get sucked in. So I can get my Swedish meatballs and buy all of everything else. So that's my pick for the summer.
Okay, and I'll just we'll go around this. So we'll do Diane, and then Walter, if you can go, and then Eric.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see going north how things will be different and how much more crowded maybe the chargers will be that we're not used to. And I still can't use the Tesla superchargers for my Ioniq 6 because I haven't gotten the official adapter, and I want to use the official adapter.
You can borrow mine, swing by. Oh, you want to use the official, right? No.
Yeah, I would just rather use since I only have like 13,000 miles on the car. So
if I get mine, I'll send it to you.
Oh, well, we have. I mean, we have them. I'm just gonna be a good girl and use my Hyundai official, which I should get in July. But in any event, so we'll probably stick with EA, Tesla, and Rands, and I guess opportunistic. I mean, we kind of charge where we need to, so we'll like Landon says, we'll MacGyver the chargers if we need to. But
I did want to ask briefly about RAN, actually, because obviously having the Rivian, you're right in that. For the rest of us who are just getting access to it, I'm kind of torn because it's a beautiful UI. They're often very quiet, and it's a nice place to charge in general. But the price is it's quite prohibitive for not really getting any extra amenities. Like when you go to a Pilot Flying J or a Love's, you get a little bit more of convenience and 24/7. The RAN is a great charging experience, but that price is really a bit of a kicker for me. What's your kind of take on where they are right now?
I'll let Steve answer.
Yeah, the price is a little shocking to me because when I first got my vehicle, it was free. It was free for about a month.
Oh, the charging.
Yeah, the charging was free for me for about a month, and then they changed their policy and they charged. I guess we were in a 42-cent area, and then like I said, we don't have RAN chargers around the house or anywhere close. But when I took a little bit of a trip and had to pay that, I think it was 56 cents or 59 cents.
Yeah, 54. Yeah.
It was a bit shocking, but I want Rivian to do good. And I did pay a lot of money for my truck, and I want them to do real good.
So I would echo that. I'm a huge fan of the brand, but you're talking about Rivian pricing there, which is like you're in the members club as best you can be, and for the rest of us, we're into mid-60s. Maybe I've seen 74 cents at Joshua Tree. It's wild out there. So just a kind of, people should definitely check before they plug into those because they are pretty pricey once you get up there.
But we want to support the brands.
Yeah, I hear that as well. It's definitely a brand that I like and would like to be in the kind of inside gang at some point. Walter, I wanted to move on to you as well for kind of who I know you're tracking it all, so you definitely must have some on your list of new folks to track.
So much, yeah, too much. It's just like we need to press the pause button. There's too much. It's like a fire hose. But this week I'm going to the Mercedes-Benz up near Steve and Diane to do a New School Insight review of that brand new station, and I'm looking forward to charging at more IANA stations, Travel Centers of America with BP Pulse, and some additional Circle K stations. And truth is, after watching Steve's video, I'm really looking forward to charging at a Love station somewhere, and there might be some showing up in Alabama pretty soon. But truth be told, I'm currently unsupervised because my wife's in a different continent. So I'm likely going to be going to Universal, Epic Universal, to try to find a charging station there. And I'll call that one my new favorite charging station.
Last but by no means least, after some excellent videos coming up from Malta by the sound of it, Eric, what are you looking to this summer as you hit the road?
Where are all the Alpitronics? I'm just looking for anything that's new in California, because it would have had to have started probably in 2022 to be open by now. No, I all joking aside, I am looking forward to getting our first sort of Iona and Mercedes charging, high power charging. Just haven't had anything ever. And then of course I'm also excited if we can get some of those Walmart chargers in, because there are actually a lot of areas in California that, believe it or not, are not actually covered by any public charging providers, fast charging providers, and Walmarts are located in those regions. So getting that coverage built up too would be nice. So any of those newer sites that we're seeing go live in the rest of the country, but are just delayed because California takes forever.
Makes sense. All the nice things come to you last, even though you have the most EVs. Well, let's see. So I wanted to make sure I go through everybody's best and worst, or what they're recommending. So I'm going to put those up as comments here whilst we close out. And to close out, I just want to kind of go through everybody again, round robin, on what are your tips, primary tips for your particular use cases? I think people have a feel for, what kind of travel scenarios you're going with. What are your best tips for, making a safe and seamless road trip as we hit the road this summer? And I'll start with Diane, I think.
I don't really have a tip, but I did want to mention something just that right now in America, we're at 9% EV adoption, and I was hearing that at 16% will be the early majority. So I thought that was really encouraging, and that's only 8% more. So that will be my tip tonight.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Joanne, many road trips under your belt. What's your kind of go-to for planning and how to have a safe and successful road trip?
Check the weather. Headwinds and tailwinds, just to be aware when you cross state lines that you might be turning into something that you're not ready for, and to have charging backups, especially in the Midwest with our mid-latitude cyclones that we get in the summer months, that it's flat and weather moves across really fast. You can get a derecho or a tornado event. So just be weather aware. EVs are heavy, but there was some tornado activity that moved a few trucks around recently. So just be weather aware.
Thank you kindly. And Eric, road trip tips, what can we offer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those experiential EV travelers. So, always try to build your stops around sort of an itinerary of the things that you would enjoy doing or the places that you would enjoy visiting while you're traveling. So don't focus too much solely on the charger themselves or the network themselves. Look at where they're located and what amenities are available nearby, and then just be flexible with that, because I've seen too many people who show up at a charger and it's full and all they're willing to do is wait, rather than, oh, there's 3 more chargers within the next 10 miles that you could go to that would facilitate your trip. And then other than that, just keep your head on a swivel, keep your hands up, keep your elbows tucked in a little bit, and make sure you're quick on your feet, and you'll do all right.
Sounding like an Angelino at the moment. Politics, stay away. Walter, safe trips, seamless activations, what are you recommending as you hit the road?
Similar to what I recommended to my son, stick with the Tesla supercharger if you could. Locate stations that are V4 dispensers. It would be your best bet, because not only are they the newer ones with the longer cables and less prone to agitating the natives, but Tesla supercharger team has been doing an increasingly good job of locating their stations at facilities with amenities as of late. So those V4 dispensers are a good indicator that it is a relatively new install and very likely co-located in a facility that has amenities and, very reliable, and, as was mentioned, ample stalls. So if it's a new EV driver that's looking for a reliable solution, that's still my go-to option.
All good tips, and I think, again, I will compile these into some kind of document that I can link out afterwards. People can hopefully use as a resource. I would definitely use filters on the likes of PlugShare, ChargeWay, whatever you can use to dial it into your particular case. PlugShare's got particularly nuanced recently, with kind of not just pull-throughs, but all kinds of different pieces you can add in. We're not quite there on price yet. I don't think anyone does that particularly well, but you can filter in free charging. You can filter out dealerships, which is usually a good idea unless you really want to see the latest Ford or Chevy bubble. What else can we do? Just kind of looking at, your priorities, I think, is probably the biggest thing. As kind of Joanne pointed out, like, if you need supplies on a trip, then certainly those Walmarts, those grocery stores, the kind of places that have long opening hours and the ability to get the things you need will definitely be something you want to work in. If you're looking to just crank out the miles, then those travel stops are really starting to appear right off the interstate. Usually you can filter in kind of things that say, I want it within half a mile of the interstate. If you find those NEVI sites, those are pretty good for that as well, if they're out there. So that would probably be my, dial in your trip, figure out what's most important to you on that particular stretch, and use the filters accordingly.
NEVI, what's that? That's like ancient.
Hey,
history.
No bad mouthing NEVI. There's 85 sites and counting. Just because it hasn't reached California yet doesn't mean it's not happening.
I think it will. I think California is going to crack the nut and actually get the NEVI money. I think that's going to win. I'm betting on California.
All right, let's do this. Couple of intros right at the end here. Austin, who has been doing sterling work around New York, checking out all the Evolve New York site. That's a NEVI piece as well. Lots of those happening. So thank you so much for updating on those. And that kind of aligns with the Volkswagen ID4 in Buffalo, New York. And Vlad, who is a frequent visitor and had some good comments there for us. Thank you. Good evening from his road trips, Detroit to Florida. I think I've taken enough of your time tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate the different perspectives. Everybody has a different kind of travel case there, and it's good to kind of get, all of us weighing in on the different things that matter to us when we're having a safe and seamless charging experience. So, as I say, I'll compile these into tips. I'll try and get the wisdom of this crowd into some kind of document, and hopefully that will serve people for future road trips. Joanne, thank you for the topic. Thank you for coming on. Diane and Steve, thank you for joining us at that last little bit of minutes notice.
Thanks a bunch.
2 weeks' time is the next one. I'll let you know the guests when I've got it all dialed in. And until then, cheers, nerds.